All right, very good. So here we are. I'm with Meg, and we're going to start our recording. I'm Elizabeth Wood. So nice to see you. This is my friend Meg Archambault. I love her. She's an amazing person. Really excited to speak with all of you about what is emotional processing anyway, and why. Why is it so important? We're literally having a conversation about it today, impromptu, because it's so important. But first, we want to talk about the how, and I want to give all of you an opportunity to be able to connect with us deeper as we get into this. We won't necessarily be taking questions today, but you're going to receive an email if you've signed up via Zoom. You're going to receive a follow-up email. We really would like to hear what your questions are as we unwrap what emotional processing is all about. We really do want to hear what you have to say, because we're going to be talking about the how all next week. We're doing an online retreat, Meg and I, but we realized that this conversation is so important, we want everyone to be able to hear it. And next week, we're doing this online retreat for 7 days on our online community on Slack. And honestly, Meg and I have been working on this content, and it's incredibly beautiful. We'll get into that later, because right now it's most important that you know what is emotional processing. It's not actually just one process. It's many, many different things. It's very creative, and it's one of the greatest tools for our ascension and our healing right now, available across the board. So I'm going to actually begin by asking Meg to share her story about how she came into emotional processing and what it's done for her, because that personal story and my personal story, well, you're going to have a personal story too. And all of these stories are incredibly important to illustrating how emotional processing is going to really work for you as you're going to be looking at it perhaps with us next week or in general in your own life. So thank you so much for coming with me today, Meg. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm thrilled to be here. I'm really excited to talk about emotional processing. As I said on my, I think it was my blog post or my Facebook page, most people think, why would you want to talk about emotional processing? And why are you so excited about it? You know, what makes I mean, it does not sound like, it's like, and I wish I had a different name for it, because my friends are like, it sounds like a meat processor, you know, it's like processing. But I love that you said that it's creative, because for me, I guess as I've come to practice it over the past 10 years and pulled different pieces of the way people process in all different ways and made it my own, now it's really a creative process, and I can listen for what's the tool or what's the thing, the process that I'm going to use for this particular thing that's in my life, right? That's happening. And so, like you said, so you asked, when did I first come about emotional processing? In the, gosh, you know, probably in the 90s. I didn't know it was emotional processing, but if you think back to the days of beating up the pillows and screaming at your parents and some of those old gestalts, I did a lot of that work in a course room, so with other people, and that was emotional processing. That was using the group environment and using you know, the emotions and getting to the raw emotions. That was emotional processing. But what I didn't know how to do, Elizabeth, is I didn't know how to do that for myself. Mm-hmm. I knew that I could go to a course room and do it. I could go to a practitioner, you know, to help me, but I never knew how to soothe myself and how to do those kind of exercises on my own, until I was really in the grips of a lot of pain and suffering in my life. I had called in a relationship where he was an addict, and I had a newborn baby. And so here I was with a newborn baby, no family around, because they lived in Pennsylvania and I was in Atlanta. And I had to ask myself the question, you know, well, what is this all about? What is this suffering all about? Because it was familiar, you know, it had that familiar tone of like, why is this happening to me again? And so there's a long story to it. So I'm just trying to give you the basics, but I found Lucia's work through her Unplugging the Patriarchy book, and I got on a small group call with her. And it was there where I actually, raised my hand, pushed *2, and she called on me, and I can still feel my heart racing, when she called on me, and I explained what was happening, that every time my partner would go out on a relapse, that I would go into terror. It's like my body went into a post-traumatic stress reaction where, psychologically I was an adult, but it felt in my body like I was going to die. And here I was with a 3-month-old, a year-old, and this process was still happening. And so what she taught me really on this phone call was how to merge with the feelings, which is not something that is easier that anybody would want to do, is merge with the terror, of the grief and the fear of that feeling of alonement and being alone and being abandoned. But she taught how to peel back the layers of emotion and down to the raw fear and reach a stage of peace or of calm that I had never reached before. And so that gave me a template to go and use it on my own. And as crazy as this sounds, I peeled back so many layers that it didn't bother me anymore. I didn't have that emotional trigger when he would relapse, to the point where, and I tell my friends this, I say, to the point where I kind of hoped he would relapse. And honey, if you watch this, you know this story. So he knows, right? Because then I could tell if I had cleared it or not.
Yeah.
And to the point where it didn't bother me. And then he didn't relapse anymore, because that's what I learned. We were two pieces of a puzzle coming together, both calling in what needed to happen for us to clear our own stuff. And so for me, that was my introduction to one way to emotionally process, which was through merging, right? And then I learned other ones, such as Leslie Temple Thurston's polarity processing, things like that. But does that give a good start to that question? I could talk on and on. So.
Oh yes, absolutely. And I want to just mirror back. So partially, I think both of us ended up in emotional processing out of desperation, really.
Yeah.
And that we also learned that when we were willing to do that, when we were willing to go as deep as we did and figure out how to do it on our own, that we watched it unfold to change the people, places, and things around us, that the inner work ended up showing up in the outer as well. And that oftentimes is a big surprise that'll happen to people when they do emotional processing. Suddenly then the outer changes too, in ways that they had only hoped before, because you ended up doing so much hard work on the inside. And then shifting from running away from the feelings, running away from the terror, running away from the symptoms, or trying to find some band-aid to fix it temporarily, even just to get through the day. That you realize that, hey, there's a better way to do it, one that's more permanent, one that can actually completely change the ball game and end the emotional charge on whatever was happening to you. That's how emotional processing can help us all. It really is what is emotional processing? It is the way, it's the permanent way of finally being done with the same challenges over and over again that might show up in your life. Would you say that's true, Meg?
100%. That's why I keep nodding. I'm like, who would have thought, and as I help other people now to look inward, right? And because we're trained, and I want to look outward, and I would have, so many people would have been, get rid of him, blame him, and I'm like, I had done enough work at that point in time to say, no, this is my reality. And this is something that's showing up for me. And I think that's the other point I'll add to that, Elizabeth, is that when I could go through something and see the outcome play out on the other end with a changed reality, I had so much more trust and faith in life and in my soul's unfolding, my soul's path, of the blueprint that I came in with, to trust that whatever is happening for this expansion, for this creation of this new reality and empowerment and greater ability to love and everything that came with it. So it wasn't just a physical form. Yes, I love to tell the story that my husband and I are now married and we have a beautiful 14-year-old and we have an amazing relationship because of processing. That's great. And then there's the intangibles too, the peace and the ability to witness more and the ability to really bring a centeredness into my days.
I like that. It's so beautiful. A centeredness. Agreed that that's what it does for sure. If I may, I'd like to describe how I came to this work too.
Yes.
So Lucia Renee is the person we both are talking about here. It's someone that I talk about as my teacher, and she's written the book Unplugging the Patriarchy. And what Lucia did for humanity was that she recognized how important it was to go into the emotions, not to run away from them, to merge with them. And it's what she calls emotional processing. And Leslie Temple Thurston wrote the book Marriage of Spirit, and it's very much mental. It is a very mental way of approaching processing. And then even beyond that too, we have the possibilities of physical processing, which I call heart commands. So many of you probably have heard them, but they're heart commands, being able to command energy out and welcome in energy that we want in a very physical way, having much more command over the body. All these things are different ways of processing, and they're all incredibly useful. Some of them will be more useful to a certain person than another because of the fact that we're all so different. So for me, just like Meg, I had a lot of serious trauma come up or terror come up, but for me, it was this long struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder, and my physical symptoms were so unbelievably horrible. They ruled my life. And one of the worst was that I'd hallucinate. I would hallucinate these really violent things. My brain was screaming for help. And I'd hallucinate. I'd be in class in college and I'd be hallucinating these horrific scenes that I could not escape from, because my body and my soul were telling me, Elizabeth, you can't keep running away from all the stuff that's happened to you. You haven't fully resolved it. You haven't fully merged with it. And I had no idea what that even meant. And I went to 14 different psychologists, and I'm really not being, I'm not exaggerating. But I've told this story before, so some of you've heard it, but I went to 14 different psychologists. Most of them, it lasted all of 2 seconds, because the first minute that I told them straight up that I'm psychic, they kicked me out. Or that wouldn't bother them so much, but my symptoms were so bad that they felt overwhelmed by it, and they would say, I'm sorry, I can't help you, which would then cause more trauma, because then I felt like I was so worthless and I was so bad that no one could ever help me. So at one point, finally, I was at the edge. I was ready to die. And it was during when I was getting my master's degree, actually. And so I struggled really hard, and I had a little son. I had a little child. So I knew, hey, I'm here for him, and I need to try one last time. I got to try to get out of this. So I found someone that was an emergency therapist that was willing to take my craziness on. And he hung out with me for 6 months, and we got nowhere. And he said, I'm not going to give up on you. I promised you I wouldn't. And I said, that's huge for me. I realize I'm a tough cookie here. And he said, but what do you really need, Elizabeth? And it dawned on me that he wanted me to go into these emotions, right? And it was really tricky, because I would be like, I do that all the time, blah, 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 but I wasn't merging with them. I wasn't really welcoming them. I was living in them, but it was miserable. And he said, well, what do you really need if it's not us going into this? And I said, well, I realize now that I actually need you to be objective with me. I need you to be neutral. And I want to look at this maze or this puzzle together from above. And I need you to give me tools that I can use so that when I go into it, I know what to do on my own. And actually, that's the whole key to what is real emotional processing. It's something you're constantly doing on your own. Once you have the tools, then the maze of this wild 3D life and merging it with all these higher dimensions and higher consciousness, it makes more sense that you are meant to be doing it constantly as a lifestyle of light. So when you're processing, you're merging with things, you're moving through them, you're using very particular techniques that maybe you modify. So for example, my therapist at that time, he said, well, you have this traumatized version of yourself, a whole bunch of them that are running the show in your subconscious. We call that frozen children or subconscious traumatized selves. And I said, well, that's true, because they're constantly like in a quorum arguing in my head, and I can't even see straight or hear straight or function because they're constantly pounding on my reality. And he said, well, you really need to try to have a talk with one of them, because there was a particular one, my 16-year-old self, who was especially mean. And I would audio hallucinate her talking, saying horrible stuff to me all the time. And he said, you have three choices. You can either go on medication. And I had told him originally, I'm not going on medication. I'm already weird enough. I have no idea what it's going to do to my weird brain. And he said, or you can try to have a conversation with her, or you can ignore it, but it'll probably get worse because you've already been ignoring it. So you know that doesn't work. So I really was left with two choices. And it was really only one choice because I wasn't going to go on medication. And I'm not poo-pooing medication, y'all, because medication is really key to some person's well-being, because we have genetically predisposed issues sometimes. That's okay. Here's what I would add to that, though. Even if you have to be on medication, emotional processing can make such a beautiful difference. I had to have a conversation with that part of myself. And I figured out a way to do it really effectively to help her heal. I brought her into a whole nother realm of healing that self and ended up practicing on myself, because I'm the ultimate guinea pig. I had so many problems. I had addiction issues. I was an alcoholic. I was addicted to ibuprofen. I know it sounds like you can't be addicted to ibuprofen, but you can. And, you know, all these different things I was suffering so badly and suicidal. It was just miserable. But when I finally recognized that, hey, I can do this on my own, I started to see the results, and they were amazing. For the first time in my life, I could actually have a day of quiet without being completely bombarded by audio or visual hallucinations from my poor suffering brain who was in constant fight or flight mode. Or I could actually go to sleep without drinking a whole bottle of wine. Or I could actually go to sleep without having nightmares all the time. And just, or having even someone be able to touch my face for the first time in my life without having like 20 million flashbacks. That was amazing that these things began to happen. And what unfolded from there, I got to meet Lucia. I got to learn emotional processing from her particular vantage point. Again, there's many different techniques here that we're talking about. And some of them you already use, perhaps. But Lucia had really developed this really deep way of doing emotional processing. And I had the privilege of being her assistant for a long time and watching hundreds and hundreds of people process properly and watching the miracles that would happen and unfold. That is literally why we're here and why we're saying to you, this is what emotional processing is, and it's why this is so important. It's the things that you're going to use every single day to help you stand in your power, to help you connect to that soul light of yours in a very pure way. What does that even mean? Well, to me, that means that you know exactly what your path is, that you feel fully guided and supported, that you feel that connection to the divine within and from without, and that you're in a state of consistent awareness. It's what we call being awake. You can become more awake. Your soul skill sets and your talents, they shine when you shift all the dense, dark trauma and junk that you've carried from this lifetime and others out of the way. And you don't just shift it out of the way by clearing. No, you got to shift it by actually merging with it, by learning how to fully love it, to learn from it in its fullness. And it's a very physical way of doing it. It's all of the above: physical, emotional, spiritual. Emotional processing is not just emotional, it's mental, it's physical. It changes the way you see other people. You'll have more compassion. Any challenge that comes to rise to meet you, you'll even, and this is probably the wildest outcome of all, you'll even get excited. So now I'm triggered by something and I'm like, yes, this is great. It's another slice of ego for me to look at. Excellent. And I don't get triggered that much anymore. But when I do, it's like, oh good. Oh, this is good.
Right.
Then you get really curious about it. So that's how I ended up in this work.
Yeah.
And what has kind of come through for you to unwrap from this too, Meg?
Well, I love a lot of what you said, and I sometimes take notes just to kind of remember here. And I love that you said process properly, because that's what we'll go into next week, the how of it. But I just want to touch on the fact that I think a lot of times I thought, if I'm just emoting, I'm feeling better, temporarily. And there's just, and I can cry but I was a crier. I mean, I was so sad, right? I was like, Melancholy was my middle name. That was just because I wore depression and victimhood and sadness. And that was just, I didn't know any differently until I really started to process enough to get a sliver of awakening to see that I would actually unconsciously use some of these things. That sounds kind of crazy, but actually use some of these things to really protect myself, because that's really what these things are, right? The triggers, the programs, the patterns that we have. Once you step back far enough, like you talk a lot about a zoom in, zoom out. Once you zoom out far enough, I could start to see that, whoa, look, I'm using that pattern over there. And, oh, I appreciate that pattern because I know now that it's protecting me, right? It's not like, oh, I have to run from it. So, something as simple as a fear that comes up, or the nervousness before coming out into the public to do something. Once I learned how to do processing more organically, right, instead of having to wait until do it at a particular time, it's an everyday thing. And then I could just learn how to, Lucia calls it, I think, turn towards it and face it. And she talks about acknowledging it and embracing it. I just use the thank you and you're welcome here technique a lot, because to me, first of all, I had to really learn self appreciation and self-kindness and self-love. It's kind of, to me, a prerequisite for even going into processing, but it's also a result of processing. Yeah. Kind of tricky in that way. But the kindness, the tenderness, the gentleness that I learned and could then bring to myself helped the whole processing technique evolve even faster. So it's like I had learned and also had the result of incredible amounts of generosity to myself that I didn't have before. And then I could apply that generosity to more processing, because I could look at a trigger and be, like you said, oh, thank you, right? I know that the trigger is now a doorway to more joy, to more light, to more connection, as you said, to be able to, for me, the end experience, it's not an end experience, but the experience is being able to sit back and rest in a neutral place, a quiet place, a still place that just, it almost brings me to tears right now because I'm doing it, right? I'm stepping into it. And it is the most exquisite place, quietude. So yeah, that's the biggest piece that comes to mind. And knowing that I can get there, if I can do it, anybody else can, and get there by doing it myself creatively
Yeah.
every day.
Yeah. It is so creative because in the moment you really never know exactly what's going to trigger you until, well, you might if you like get really deep into a trigger and then you're like, whoa, this is happening all the time. But that's even more interesting. And I actually relate highly to that, finding that solitude, that quiet, because my mind was so not quiet my whole life. And I will never forget. There's two really specific days in my memory. One is the very first day my mind was quiet, and I cried the whole day because I had never experienced that before. And I finally could just be in the moment. It was unbelievable. It was a full body experience, not just my mind. And then the other day was when I had finally healed my gut so that my skin could be clear and I could go out to the grocery store without having to put on makeup. And that day was also equally important in my trauma work because it was a day where I could discover what it was like not to feel so worthless. And that and it seems so simple, but as all of you know, right? It's all the little stuff that'll get you. But those 2 days, I remember so vividly, and I hold them as my big, key moments of clarity. And then there's one that's also stands out too, shifting trauma out of our DNA. Even the DNA trauma that's not ours. Emotional processing does that too. And again, we're going to talk about the how next week, all of the hows, as many as we can. We're going to be covering it from A to Z. And it's going to give you a really good overview of what tools you might want to work with and how to use them. And then you'll get to play from there, because Meg and I, we might process very differently, even though we know the same tools. So like, for example, in a process for me, what I will do is I'll find the emotion, I'll dig in, I'll welcome it, and then I might use that because I've actually used processing to help me be a better psychic. I'm a better seer because I process. And those of you who really want to activate your third eye, process. If you process, you'll see more. And this is something that literally will occur to all of us. Emotional trauma is like a callus, and it builds up over your third eye, it builds up over your heart. This, especially for you guys out there listening to us, you men out there, the buildup of the callus, the armor that the men are being taught to hold, for example, make it very hard for men to really feel the energy in their bodies. Processing helps shift all of that. Processing shifts all the blocks, the negative programs, the beliefs, the trauma that might have blocked you from being able to perceive energy outside the self and be able to tap into the inner planes or your guides. Processing shifts all the trauma and the drama out of your organs and your gut so you can digest better, so you can feel grounded, so you can actually enjoy being in a 3D human earth body for once. I mean, seriously, would you say that that's happened to you too, Meg, that you actually have seen your spiritual gifts magnified and feel better in your body being here in the 3D?
Oh, okay. Definitely, of course. And I was going to say, I was hoping you would talk about that, because I know a lot of people have challenges, physical challenges and physical symptoms. And I know that it's really weird, but when the gifts start coming back online, it's like a second nature. Then it's almost like you don't even realize that you're getting your gifts online, because they always were in some ways. You just weren't even awake to them. And so now, for example, I have a situation where a friend had just an operation, and I could like, I don't know how, but I mean, psychically, I could tell in an instant how that illness was was revealing something that was meant to be worked on or seen in her life, right? And so it's my abilities on magnified.
Yeah.
I guess that's one way to look at it. But yet subtly, so it's it's not even hardly recognized. It just happens. You know, I don't know if is that something, have you experienced that as
Yeah,
well?
'cause there's no attachment anymore, right? I mean,
Yeah.
part of what we're talking about is egoic structure. We've been mainly talking about trauma, yes. When you do emotional processing, that's what you'll target a lot of. But then you get into, well, okay, I've shifted so much trauma out of the way. You know, now what am I seeing in my life? And usually the next step is egoic structure. So attachments, expectations, resistance, and anything that's blocking you from being able to feel in that oneness. And that's really key. But then when you get through even the big attachments and stuff, like maybe attachments to negative stuff, right? Well, hey, guess what? Attachments to the positive stuff, attachments to things that you love is going to be on the plate too, because that's something that you can shift for even greater formlessness. So there's all these really beautiful outcomes to processing, because the outcomes are things like more trust, feeling more in your body, being able to really feel full body awakening experiences and not just see everybody else get to have them and then you feel left out anymore. More psychic ability coming online naturally, trust, unconditional love, better relationships, right? Why? Well, because all that light that's from your soul gets run through your trauma. It gets run through your attachments and your expectations and your resistance. All that gets run through. Those are sort of like negative lenses, perhaps. And then what do other people see? Like, for example, I kept bringing in other addicts in my relationships because I myself was running my light through addiction. So addicts, well, they'd see that and they'd say, well, I relate to her. And there wasn't anything wrong with that. But what happened was that person then said, hey, that light, I know that light. That quality of light, I relate to that. And then we attach in a codependent way, feeding each other's calluses, feeding each other's lenses of density. And that is something, once I shifted that out of the way, that relationship couldn't work anymore. It failed. And why? Because I'd finally shifted that lens out of the way and my true light would show up. And for those of us who can see that kind of light, it can be really tragic when we can see someone's true light and see the trauma they're running it through, and then feel so helpless that we can't help them. And there's a savior complex in that, right? Attachment to other people's outcomes. But as I've shifted that out of the way, even another layer of light can come through more purely. And that ends up supporting those individuals in their shifting and changing how they need it as a soul, not how I want it, but how they need it. So now I've attracted a marriage with a guy who has connected to the wavelength that's much more pure, because he came into my life when I'd done all this work. And so he perceived this better, more quality, more pure version of my own soul's light. So this is how sort of different outcomes that can happen, how relationships will change. And even as I've continued, my husband has transformed. He's transformed because he's being maintained in that quality of light, and he gets to keep rising to meet it. It's a challenge for him and for me, and we get to grow in that. So there's so much that'll happen. There's even like examples with my children who are very small, 2 and 4, but my children, they themselves have been able to continue to transform and be nurtured as I continue to constantly work on myself. So it becomes a way of life. And that's what we want to show you how to do. How do you make this a way of life? How do you make this a mindset shift that's so massive that you can't fail? You can't mess up. when you go into emotional processing. Yes, there's really particular proper ways of doing it. Once you learn the rules, once you learn the foundations, then you'll learn how to break them or get creative with them. So if you'd like to add more to that, Meg, I'd love for you to share.
It makes me so excited because so many things were popping up as you were talking. I think one of the big things that I've been noticing a lot of is the identities that form around these things that you're talking about, just so people know these structures, right? So in the language of polarities, it's when a polarity forms, it's holding up the egoic structure. And so as we dissolve these polarities, the egoic structure can fall away. But you know what? Because we're so trained to be protective, like for me, I would bring on a spiritual identity. So it might look nicer, right? And it was really great for a while because I was, being successful from a spiritual realm. But you know what? Everything that's unlike love, to me, it will come up against a wall. It'll come in my face and it'll show me that this is not the end all and the be all. This is not the truth. And so my life had to come crashing down again from a spiritual perspective, and then see how I use spirituality as yet another protection, another egoic protection. And then that I could process away as well, or process and clear as well. And then that brings on what I'll call the true light, because that's what I wrote down is the like real. It makes, like, what I see about you and what I know about you, it makes you more real. There's not,
more accessible.
More accessible, right? Like, you have kids, I have kids, and it's like, yeah, we do marriage and kids and grocery shopping, and it's real. It's every day, it's going and standing at the grocery line. It's going and watching everybody else's triggers in traffic, and watch myself, whether I get triggered or not, and being able to sit in my body in the car, right? Because you're talking about body, and feeling the whole body driving, and feeling and processing while I'm driving. Like, that's everyday processing. If you can process in traffic, if I can process when my son triggers me, because he's my greatest teacher right now. I have a 14-year-old, and my husband laughs. He's like, he knows how to trigger you and push your buttons more than anybody. So,
yeah, my 4-year-old does. Yeah.
4-year-old, yeah, 4, 14. So yeah, so it's watching life from a whole different lens, and watching how everything is for service. Everything is for my own evolution, and taking it that way changes everything, right? Doesn't it? It's that then his life is a gift, and anything that happens, yeah, I might get triggered right away and be like, have an old quick victim programming or something like that, or poor me, or like, oh, worthlessness just showed up again. And then it's like, oh, another layer, right? Or for me, most recently, I've played out a lot of victim roles. And that was my number one favorite, by the way. And so, but recently now I get to play on the other side, the tyrant role, and look at where I'm unconsciously and now consciously being the bully or the tyrant, or arrogant instead of worthlessness. And we'll talk a lot about polarities and polarity processing as well next week too. But I think that's mostly what was coming up, is the realness, right? It's the ability to be accessible and real.
It's why we're calling it everyday processing, which I love. I think that's brilliant. You came up with that. But it is an everyday way of living. And at first, it's, hey, we're gonna have I'm gonna learn this technique. I'm gonna dig in to this technique, and then what will it do for you? Well, you'll find out. So, like, for example, one of the things we're going to cover briefly next week is what we call squares. And squares, like, I don't use squares very much, but when I do, I get these holy cow breakthroughs. So I'll use squares as a technique every once in a while with something that's really hard for me. And I'll give an example. So, for example, last year I was kind of nailed by my teacher saying, "You're too nice. It's not the kind of nice that is pleasant. It's an abrasive nice, and you need to be more ruthless." There's a polarity, right? Nice versus ruthless. And then I started to dig into that, and I didn't stay there. I dug in and I said, nice versus ruthless. Well, that to me means me really wanting people to accept me versus being banished, because banishment is something I'm terrified of. So I recognize that in myself. I dug in. I said, oh, there's something underneath this whole nice, ruthless thing. What is it? Oh, it's banishment versus full acceptance. And so then I was like, oh, that's the foundation. Okay, let me look at that. So I did a square where I looked at, where do I desire to be banished? When do I desire it and when do I fear it? When do I desire to be accepted and when do I fear being accepted? It was those tricky ones that were the most important to me. When I've desired to be banished or when I feared to be accepted is what brought it, just blew up this whole big chunk of my ego around this part of myself that believes I'm better than everybody. That there's this aspect of myself that says, fine, banish me, because I'm still going to be so awesome without you anyway. Right? And I'm just being real here. Yeah. This isn't because I actually think I'm better than anybody else. It's a part of my ego. It's a structure that I had to look at. And then there was the whole fear of being accepted. Well, if people actually really knew what I was thinking, would they even like me? So it blew this huge thing up for me to look at. And then I could merge with that discomfort and move through it. And on the other side of it, I found, wow, I'm free of this fake niceness now. And I can say no when I really need to say no without wondering if I'm going to get banished. And wow, now I feel so comfortable. Now I can flow with all these different types of people in equanimity without feeling any of this better than or worse than or fear of them not really knowing me or liking me if they really know me. All of it was gone. And I could actually just be kind in a way that wasn't abrasive anymore. And I took this huge giant guard down and I called my teacher and I said, thank you for that, because I don't think you really knew how important it was for me. But I want to tell you that I'm so sorry that I have put this block up between you and I for so long because I was really afraid that you wouldn't love me the way I really am. And we just sat on the phone and cried. And she said, finally, welcome back. Like, welcome. Yes, you. There's no blockages anymore to you just being you. There's a softness. And she could finally love me because I let her. But that's a really good example of how one technique might be incredibly useful. And it's not one I use every day, although I'm looking for polarities in others in session. And then sometimes I'll notice polarities in general, but it's one that when I have used it, it was so mind-blowing what it gave to me. So I use it very strategically. Whereas like one that I'm constantly using is being able to merge with stuff. So, oh, that, okay, no problem. I can merge with that, merging, and then always being able to move forward without any of the damaging energies from that density that I might be merging with pounding on my field all the time. I don't have to deal with that anymore. So if something comes in to pound on my field, no problem. I'm going to dig into it. I'm going to merge with it. I'm going to find what the triggers are so that then they don't come up to trouble me. And I can take that approach as a good seer, being able to zoom in and out and use my talents to benefit the people around me and be in service. But that's just one of the many examples I've got of how if you learn how to do a technique, you can play with it the way you want to. That's what we really want to share with you.
Yeah, and that made me think of the beauty of doing this square process, that you can use a technique like that and let it, how can I say this, instead of instead of you working it, let it work you.
Let it work you. Yep.
Let it work you. Like, and that's what I'm learning and seeing and growing with, is that the square itself, and what we're talking about is the fear and the desire of each side of a polarity, letting that show me where I might have a frozen child, where I might have the 3-year-old who's still throwing a temper tantrum because she's not getting her way. Or as I'm concede, like then I have a teenager who comes in, and the 3-year-old's the one that it feels worthless and is not welcomed, or people are not going to like me. I got a big, old self-hatred program that runs oftentimes still. And it's like that little one, right? She doesn't want to be rejected. So the teenager that I produced inside that took over is like, well, I'm not going to let you not like me. I'm going to reject you first. Right? It's like, I'm going to keep you at arm's length and not even show up, not even be vulnerable. Right. And so what I'm seeing is how the process of the square has a process within it that you can use a frozen child or a frozen teenager within the square, and how I can use the welcoming and the accepting of that frozen child and teenager to soften myself. Because I think that's what you're saying a lot too, is for me, especially the the achiever, the good student, the personality that I grew up with the straight A student, right, you too, yeah. And I see this a lot in my friends and women, in the patriarchal world, it's the masculine side that we've identified with, right? The father side. I often say father addicted and mother deprived, because it's like I'm using that masculine to get the approval of the masculine, but I never had the training. I never had the vitamin of nurturance to teach me how to nurture myself. And so I can see that as a polarity and within myself, and learn how to give myself the nurturance, or how you would say with a frozen child, come here and tell me, what do you need, right? What do you need? And bring her into my heart. And that could all come from a process of a polarity or a square. And so I guess what I'm saying is it's like having this huge kitchen full of all these different ingredients and tools that if something comes up into my awareness field, that, a little blurb of something I'm bothered about, or I'm finding myself be very, negative. It's like, oh, well, what process do I have? I have all these ingredients, all these tools that I can use if I just stop for a moment, right? And just pause and take time to get present with myself and see, okay, what is it that's coming up? Let me welcome that. And what tool can I use in order to bring this to rest?
Yeah. I think that's actually one of the most probably important whys that we have to share today, because we're talking a lot lately about how important remaining in the present really is. And what does it really do for us? Well, it stops you from leaking energy. And that's kind of constant awareness and self-assessment, that constant mindset of being in self-assessment in the moment ends all that energy leakage. It ends it, because then you're constantly saying, oh, well, that memory came up, or that flashback came up for a reason, because, well, maybe there's and you follow the thread, maybe there's a frozen self, maybe there's a negative program, maybe there's this, that, or the other. And then you go in, you find the linchpin or the plug, and you pull it by merging with it fully, by welcoming it. When I teach people to erase negative programs, for example, we don't shame the program.
Right.
We also don't congratulate it. We thank it in gratitude. And that actually is a very awakened way of approaching all of these challenges. And it shifts how you approach the really dark, dense, difficult 3D stuff that you're dealing with. And those of you who feel energy so much, this digging into and merging with this stuff probably sounds incredibly terrifying and like torture. And I'm not going to mince words here. It can feel like that. It certainly can. When you go into full-blown worthlessness and you welcome it, it does not feel good. But here's what's so key about that. You're going to be in command at all times. We want to show you how to be in the witness, in the soul's witness. Who's in charge of your body? Who's really in charge of this life that you're living? We want to help you get that power back. And we want you to be the soul in charge. So when we erase a negative program or we command energy out and we welcome something new in, like in a heart command perhaps, you're going to be in charge the whole time. You don't feel as though you have zero control anymore. It's the opposite. You're in the moment, in the witness at all times, and you get to be in your own power as a creator being in ways that no one can tell you to do. You'll be it by emotionally processing. You'll become it. It's one of the greatest outcomes, being present and being in the witness and maintaining it as a way of life, as a mindset, as a function of your reality, having a lot more command over your reality. It is one of the greatest outcomes that I could possibly have. I didn't expect it, honestly. I was watching all these people describe it, but I didn't expect it for myself. I never did feel in control of anything, really. And so being able to actually not necessarily be in control, but maintain the witness, maintain neutrality, maintain the objective soul position that, hey, who's in charge of this body? Is my body in charge of me, the soul, or the other way around? Is my soul really in charge of my life? People would tell me that was true. It didn't look like it until I started to do processing. And then I realized, oh, wow, this is true. Because I could say, dear heart, please lift this dark, dense trauma, this nasty feeling of worthlessness out of my whole body and field now. And then I'd welcome in, dear heart, please fill my whole body and field with all that pure, connective, clear light and that unconditional love that I want so much now. And then I experience it because I actually was in charge the whole time. I just had never given my soul the chance to be that creator being. And it's empowering. Processing empowers you in ways that are not going to be something people will just constantly tell you. It's going to be something you can finally feel. And I absolutely know that's true because every single person that I've worked with on this level has had those results. I'm only interested in measurable results. You can trust me to tell you if something's going to give you a result or not. Because first off, I experimented on me, the worst guinea pig possible, first, and got results. And then I started working with others and then saw those results. And now it's many thousands of people Meg and I have witnessed, and many hundreds and thousands that we've helped. So this is something that we want to share with you because we know how valuable it is to get all of us back into our power. All of us are here on the front lines. No one's going to escape that. We're all equal here on this edge of consciousness. What can you do to stand in your full power to help bring on the golden age? This is the first thing that you can do.
I think that's beautiful, Elizabeth. It touches on that not only are we processing for ourselves, we're processing for our lineage, we're processing for every single person out there because our energy affects everybody. And it's our service. To me, it's the true way of being in service to the planet, because we're not out there using another polarity to be against something.
Right.
We're standing instead in neutrality. Once we've processed our victim tyrant and our worthlessness, arrogance, we can stand in neutrality and be the beacon of alignment that will then bring in the frequency and touch the frequency of other people to stand in alignment, right?
Yeah, I was just having like a seeing.
I saw you go somewhere, yeah.
I agree. It's that alignment, and that's what we want for you. We want you to feel alignment and feel it as a full body experience, as a full consciousness, soul level experience.
Yeah.
Because Meg and I, we're constantly playing in that alignment now.
Yeah. And
it works.
It works. That's the thing I want to tell people is like, this is not just I was born this way kind of thing, right? Like, that's like the thing. It's like, no, this is not a mistake. This is conscious application.
Yeah.
Right? It's conscious application. It's going from, if you have to take it's being from, if you have the visual, being tossed around in the ocean by the waves, not at will. That's my life prior to processing. That's the people out there. It's like being tossed around by the energies and the drama and the trauma, and not having a foot on shore, right? And it's bringing yourself on shore, or the riverbanks, if you want to use the riverbank scenario, and really learning how to be the witness. So I could put my toe in the water little bits at a time, not all at once, but my toe in the water. What does it feel like to be a victim? Oh, I don't like that, right? It's like, well, let me train myself to keep building this witness so that I can go in a little bit more and clear a little bit more and clear a little bit more, right? Until it's like, oh, now I feel so much stronger to be able to put my whole body in the ocean and be, okay, right, I can feel this. And it's not going to dissolve me because I'm already, it's hard to put in words, right? I'm already dissolved enough so that I can just float.
Yes. Formlessness is what we're really shooting for here. It's what the earth is embodying. It's the next step for human beings to embody formlessness, not to just understand it with our minds, but to embody it now. And this, again, it shifts all the heavy stuff, the density, the trauma, the lineage inherited trauma, the triggers, you name it. List off all the issues that you're sick and tired of. And there is what you're looking at. And it might seem like an overwhelming amount of work, but that's what the techniques are for, because they go in and they say, oh, worthlessness. Well, that's showing up all over the place. Let's take all that worthlessness and pile up into one big pile and light it up and merge with it to finally dissolve it in formlessness. It's the most efficient way of getting all that done. And that's why it's so useful. It's no more of that drudgery and feeling alone anymore. Then you feel fully supported because you're witnessing it actually occur physically, emotionally, mentally, and in the people, places, and things around you. That's perfect. I love it. Meg, what's one last thing you might like to say about what we're doing next week? And we'll describe a little bit more of that here in a moment. I'm going to post a link for all of you in the chat about a description of what we're doing in this 7-day retreat. And it sounds like it's a lot of work, but we're doing all the work for you so that you can be in receiving. That's the fun part. But what's one last thing you might add into, the what is processing and why is it so important?
I think the what came to me when we started originally talking about doing this was the whole everyday word that my greatest wish is to have everyone be able to know this as a way of life, not as a reaction, so not having to create the drama in life in order to process, but to process it in advance, almost to get ahead of the curve so that processing can happen automatically. And then the drama doesn't have to show up in the 3D world. And there's so much more peace. And now we're able to help others do that. And that's what a lot of the people, perhaps even coming on the retreat, are wanting to do as well, being of service, right? Because one of the most recent processes that I did was around the sheath, back in just in November, it's like 5 polarities that came together to form this sheath where I couldn't own my own skills, where I had so much doubt and so much fear of coming out into the open with these skills, and the processing techniques help to peel away that sheath. So I guess what I'm wanting to say is this is an everyday lifestyle that is for all realms of people, not just people who are in the middle of trauma, but it helps with the trauma and the drama that you're in, but it helps people who've moved past the trauma too, and are looking for ways to be of service to the world, right? And shine their light in a way that's not from an egoic structure, but through the clear formlessness.
Yeah.
And it becomes fun. Like, we're going to make it fun, right? Like,
oh, yeah, exactly. It's going to be fun and beautiful and really enjoyable and good for men and women, good for those of you who want to have better relationships. I mean, really imagine if you have these simple things that you can even be teaching your little bitty kids, like my little bitty kids saying, you feel angry? That's okay. Let's just be angry. Let's welcome the anger here, you know. Okay, now let's figure out what are we going to do about it? What actions are we going to take? You know, it's all the little, just getting people to be more present. You know, imagine yourself surrounded in people who are so keenly aware of their egoic structure that they continue to shift more out regularly as a way of thinking, as a lifestyle, that they allow all that pure light to move through unbridled, unblocked, unfiltered. And those are the folks that we're going to be merging with to rebuild this planet. That's why Meg and I really saw that this was so important. And it's not just us. We've had a lot of people around us say, hey, use this platform that you're doing this work on, use it to open up processing for people as as average ladies. Neither of us are sitting here claiming we're enlightened by any means, but we certainly know how to juggle the 3D and the mystical. And really, what's been the one thing to help us do it? It's this. It is processing. And that's why it's so important. Yeah.
Do you want to say anything about the
let's begin.
Structure of the retreat next week?
Yes.
I'll just say my piece, and you can talk a little bit about the Slack platform, but Elizabeth and I are creating this really awesome document. I know I don't get excited about documents much, but but I love to open myself up to bring in information. It's just one of the things I love to do. So I sit here at this desk and I'm like, wow, like how do you describe what processing is? I don't know. It comes through, and it comes through my pencil, and here it comes. It shows up on a piece of paper. But Elizabeth takes it, you take it, and you put it into this beautiful PDF document that's meant to give a gift of light as you read it. So this is just one of the things that's going to be part of the retreat is information that's being delivered in a way that brings its own signature of light, is what I'll call it.
It's very visual, so we're going to be appealing to all, right? So some of you are kinetic learners, some of you are visual learners, some of you are audio. And so kinetic learners, they're going to connect with us via an introduction Zoom on Monday. On Monday evening, we're going to get together and you'll be able to be with us in a very physical capacity. You're going to see us. You're going to hear us for a couple hours. We're going to go digging in really deep into the foundations. And then we're going to do an audio call on, I believe, Thursday evening. Thursday evening, so after work for most people. And then a final Zoom call on Sunday, because it goes from Monday to Sunday. And so we'll be doing 2 visual Zoom calls and then 1 instant teleseminar audio call, all of which will be recorded for you. You can use them over and over again. Meg and I are also doing some short MP3s to help you audio connect with the information in a very practical way, because she and I are all about practical. So we're going to get together and we're going to be creating short audios for pretty much nearly every day, about 6 full days of work. But you're going to get a short audio about us talking about our personal experiences applying the techniques that we're going to show you. And then each day on our Slack platform, I have the Circle community on Slack, and it's a beautiful alternative social media space, and you'll have access to the whole entire community that whole week. So you can actually make friends, and we hope you'll come join us permanently. We have a membership for $13 a month to join us there. Nonetheless, you'll still get access with the whole retreat to the whole platform, and then you'll get access to special channels each day that will open up. And those channels are exclusive to you who are joining the retreat. On those channels, you can be getting one-on-one feedback on your phone app if you want to download it on your phone or on the computer or on your iPad or whatever you want to do. You can be connecting with Meg and I at any point during the day. You can post or not. It's up to you. But what we'll give you is a link every day to the beautiful PDFs we're making. They're not just PDFs. It's words, yes, but Meg and I are practicing weaving light together, and I've been able to turn them into something that is full of visual power and light. And I've had incredibly good feedback from the way that I do it. And so we're doing it again this time. We're taking all this really practical typed out info, which you'll still get access to if you really enjoy that reading part of it, no problem. But we're turning it into visuals that are full of light. So each visual will inspire you to do something deep with the technique we show you. So for example, there's a day where we talk about patterns and triggers and all these things. And I found these perfect visuals, some of which are Meg's pictures, actually. And so where we get to put in a lot of power and light, mystical light. So when you look at the visual of that, it's going to inspire you to start looking for patterns or looking at triggers in a very mystical way. It's actually appealing to the soul level of work we're doing here. So I really like doing them because it's my way of being artistic in a very structured way. It's my way of creating something that's going to inspire you, not just you listening to me talk or just reading plain old words. It's more than that, much more. So we want to appeal to all the different types of learners. You get to involve yourself as much as you like. You get to have feedback from us with questions, answers, processes, as much as you like or not at any time during the day. So if you are busy with work all day and you can only do it in the evening, no problem. I get notifications on my phone, and I'm got my phone with me the whole week, and I see, oh, somebody just posted about a process they're going through with what they were looking at. And then we'll be able to support you in that instant. That's something that's really special about this. Is it's a retreat for you to be able to use as you wish at your leisure in jammies with a cup of tea as you like. And you can be as interactive as you want. You can use our skills as deeply as you need during that time. And so this is incredible amount of value we want to give you because we actually see how very, very important it is that we walk through this every day for a whole week. You see, Meg and I could have taught like maybe a day-long workshop on all this stuff and packed it in, and then you'd walk away feeling overwhelmed. But instead, we're going to be doing this sort of thing, especially this kind of depth work over a whole week where you're held by our light field, where you're held by a community who takes this stuff seriously, who's actually awake and is using it. And all the people on the Slack platform that you're going to get to know on different parts of the platform, well, they'll attest to you about how important all this has been for them too. But that's the kind of support we want to give you. And we know that you're going to take this and you're going to apply it and you're going to teach others, and we want you to. We want you to teach others. We want you to share it. We want you to enjoy it. And so certainly, honor system, giving away content's one thing, but neither Meg nor I own these processes. These are the universe's. They belong to you already. And that's something we're very conscious of. We want to appeal to your soul level, getting you into a mindset, into that lifestyle shift, a lifestyle of light. So that's the structure of it. That's how it looks. I want you to just feel it from our energy here, how laid back and gentle it is, but also with a great amount of attention to detail and light. And you'll feel it. We've had feedback from other retreats that that's how they felt. People felt very held in that light, and were able to have major breakthroughs over that whole week, even though they might not have had a lot of posting that they did. That's not a problem. People had huge breakthroughs anyway by just literally even reading the PDFs or listening to the MP3s or being with us on a Zoom. Many breakthroughs will happen. Miracles are going to happen. We don't actually have any doubt of that. We're prepared fully for the breakthroughs and miracles and to celebrate with you as they unfold.
Yeah, I think, and it's just, I'll say it's just a start. It's a beginning. As we were told, and I think as you and I both do, is we've taken the work that has been taught to us and used it as a springboard to make it our own. And so we invite you to take this work and use it as a springboard and make it your own and add to it and mix it up and make it yours, because it's not ours. We can't do the processing for you. We're just doing everything we possibly can to give you all the techniques and perspectives and tools and encouragement and inspiration, right? In order to make sure that you leave after the 7 days and you have something, you have momentum, you have awareness, and you have something to go forth with, right? And you don't have to wait for an appointment with someone. You don't have to wait for a special occasion. You can just run with it. And I think that's what I'm so excited about for people, right?
Yeah, it's going to create a lot of ingenuity. And every time Meg and I have ever worked with anyone on anything, and I know I'm speaking for you, Meg, at the moment, but I can especially speak for myself that sharing techniques or having myself being someone who's created a new technique, the heart commands is something fresh. It's different. It's physical processing. And I added to it. And, I added to it because I saw that Lucia was focusing in on the emotional body. And of course, my mind said, as an anthropologist, what about the physical body? So back in the day, I thought, what about the physical body? So I got really deep and said, well, look at the DNA, look at the heart, look at the, I started to learn about how to help our physical bodies. And then I created physical processing. But that's stuff that all of you can do too. I mean, I was just know nothing out of college coming up with this stuff. So, hey, if I can do it, if I can be and create something new and have ingenuity out of the things I learned and then find great benefit and measurable results from it, then you can too. So all of you out there who need that extra support, it's a full spectrum offering here. And it's for support, it's for breakthroughs, it's for measurable change, and it's for you as someone in service to then also jump from. That's all. And gosh, that's a lot. So we're both obviously really excited about it. We're both also very confident in the outcomes we know will happen because we've done this for a very long time. And we know for ourselves too how that's helped us and continues to. It's an ongoing lifestyle. Well, thank you, Meg. I know we're at a little over our hour. But there is a quick question that I do want to address. Laura asks, will you be talking about processing emotional trauma triggered by the environmental devastation going on currently? So, Laura, what you're pointing out is something very big, right? It's huge, environmental devastation. And what we want to show you how to do is to go and actually greet the pain of all of that and learn how to learn from it fully, to merge with it fully so that it no longer devastates, but gives you even greater capacity for very powerful action and words and thoughts and deeds that can make a difference in healing our earth, right? So while we might not say we need to look specifically at environmental devastation, we're going to give you tools for you to be able to do that on your own. And so it doesn't matter what anyone comes to the table with next week, anything. And we really mean that, because Meg and we've heard it probably, but anything, bring it all, bring all of the worst, bring all of it.
And pushback too.
Yeah, bring all the pushback, bring it all to the table. We will show you step by step how you can be dealing with this in your personal life and make a giant breakthrough in how you're here to, for example, Laura, perhaps serve the healing of the planet more fully without being harmed by the density and the trauma that devastation has caused any longer, so that you can move through it fully, full body, full soul, full mind and emotions on board, to get to the other side where there's actual action, where there's actual change that you can witness immediately. So I hope that's answered your question. But we want all of you to bring all of your stuff to the table to look at for yourself. It's worth thinking about. What are the things that I really want to address? Laura, you'll have your list. Everybody's going to have their list. What do I really want to address? And you know what? Challenge us. I love it when someone says, I don't think you can address this.
Me too.
I don't think you can do it. And I say, great. Then let's go in and let's do it.
Yeah.
And you know what? We're going to navigate together, because Laura, you might need to have a very specific set of techniques you use to address that devastation. And it'll be unique to you. And we want to help you do that.
That she could then share.
And then
that might be for her to share.
Exactly. So that's the approach we're taking here. We're not shy about any topic. And so I think that's very key. We want you to bring all the stuff that's really up for you right now is absolutely worth looking at. And you'll be able to use the techniques we show you, and we'll help you. We'll be with you the whole way. Good. That's like a great personal example of what we're going to be able to give you. I'm so glad. Fabulous.
And if you have any questions, if people have any questions between now and Monday, email you, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So everyone will get a follow-up email after this, and you'll get an opportunity to give some questions and that might be specific that you'd like us to look at next week. Please do. We're paying attention, and we're gathering questions, and we're turning them into, all right, these are very similar. We're going to look at this. These are very similar, and so please, feedback is welcome. And listen, for those of you who feel that you simply don't have time to go through this content, it's going to be available to you forever. The content won't go away. The platform itself, you're paying partly to be on the platform for the week. You won't have access to that permanently. Those those retreat channels that'll be open will go away, but the content's yours. The videos will be yours. The PDFs will be yours, and you'll be able to consistently go back to them to be able to use them no matter what. And then later on, we might do this again. So we certainly do want to do more retreats on very specific techniques as well. And so, for example, I might do a whole retreat on the 3 minds technique, how to use the brain, heart, and gut to discern and how to do work with the heart space, doing heart commands, etc. That would be a specific technique that will delve in even deeper into another week-long retreat. But this is not going to go away. The content's yours. That's what you're definitely paying for. And you're also paying for the time that you get to spend with us, however you might use it. Even if it's just energetic support for a week, you have it. Good. Oh, I'm so glad. And thank you all. We've gone over a little while, but it's been really worth it. And thank you so much, Meg. I always love sharing and working together with you very much.
It's been fun. And I'm looking forward to next week. And this is an experiment for us too. So we get to merge together. So
exactly. We're going to merge. We're going to show people what that looks like. We come from 2 different generations, very interesting backgrounds, and lots of similarities, lots of differences, and all of that being able to merge it nonetheless. That's going to be something really, really lovely. And thank you all for being here. We sure really appreciate it. And I will be reading all the chat stuff afterwards. So anything that we might have missed, I read it every time. So you are heard. We feel you. We see you. We hold you in our light for the rest of the day. And just all of you who might be watching on YouTube, we really are also there for you. We feel you. We see you.
Yes.
Good. Namaste, everyone. Have a beautiful, exquisite day, and happy Mother's Day to all of you who are moms, and we bless you on this special Mother's Day too. So I hope all of you will have a good weekend.
All right. Much love. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.